The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network. It's time for Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. We'll talk all things Hokie wrestling with Coach Tony Robie and staff. Now, let's join your host, Hall of Fame wrestling writer and broadcaster, Jason Bryant.
Episode 95 of Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. Jason Bryant here with you, with the head coach of your Virginia Tech Hokies, Tony Robie, as Hokie Wrestling heads to Pittsburgh at the Peterson Event Center on Sunday, March 8th for the ACC Championships. And Coach Robie, you're a Pennsylvania guy, even though you don't live up there anymore. What's it like to, every time you go back home and get to wrestle in a tournament, now you got Pittsburgh right there for your Hokies?
Yeah, it's obviously very rich wrestling area. I grew up about 2 hours north of Pittsburgh in Erie in western Pennsylvania, but definitely identify with Pittsburgh. Is spent a lot of time there wrestling and going to Steelers games and over the course of my childhood. So it's good. It's good to get back home and have an opportunity for a lot of my old friends and family to come down and make the 2-hour drive from Erie down to Pittsburgh and support us at the ACC Championships. So we're excited about it. We're excited to get the dual meet season over with and get on to tournament season and, see what our guys can do in this postseason.
Yeah, speaking of dual meet season, a rather thud to the end of the dual meet season, ranked as high as third in the dual meet rankings, and then ending with losses at NC State and Pittsburgh. Going into the postseason, what's the adjustments that you had to tell the squad there? I mean, the loss to Pitt, on paper was an upset, and it was a top 10 duel, but it's something you had to probably come away with kind of shaking your head a little bit.
Well, I mean, I don't know. We lost to two pretty good teams at the end of the year in very close matches, and I've been saying this all year. Our margin for error this year is very, very small in dual meets. So when one or maybe two things don't go our way, it makes it a challenge. And I felt like we wrestled well in some places and we didn't wrestle well in some places. And both those dual meets to close the season. And obviously it's always disappointing to lose. And that's, not how we wanted to finish our dual meet season. But at the same time, those things happen when you're competing in a conference that's as good as the ACC is in wrestling right now. And we have 3 losses. They're all the top 10 teams. Unfortunately, they've all come in the last month or so here, and they're all within the ACC. So, we're moving past it and again, focusing on what our guys can do at the ACCs and then again at the NCAA championships. And I still think we have a lot of guys that can accomplish some great things for us here to close out this season.
Yeah, back to the scene of the crime is that Pitt loss did take place in Pittsburgh. And from a tournament standpoint, getting away from the dual meet season, what is one thing that Pitt does well when they host this event?
Well, I think that you're going to have knowledgeable wrestling fans. Hopefully we get a really good crowd there. It's the Pennsylvania High School State Tournament is this weekend as well, which doesn't necessarily help the event. The tournament is on a Sunday, so it doesn't necessarily overlap, but that's a lot of wrestling for people to take in over the course of the weekend. And a lot of the high school kids that are competing at the Pennsylvania State Championship that are from that Western Pennsylvania area probably, leave from that tournament on Sunday morning, and we start wrestling at 11 o'clock on Sunday. So it presents a few challenges, but it's, it's going to be a great event. It's going to be as competitive as it's ever been in terms of teams that I think have a chance to win it. And, it'll be good. They'll do a great job hosting it at the Peterson Event Center, which is a really nice arena. I think it's been there twice in the last 10 years or so. So we're excited to get back up there and compete.
We look at the qualification procedures. It's been this way for about 10 years. Each wrestler throughout the course of the season has the opportunity to earn an allocation spot for their conference. And those are a sliding scale, whether it's, you hit 3 of the benchmarks, the coach's rank, the win percentage, and the RPI. Of course, the RPI has been a little bit of a discussion point here in the last couple of weeks with certain tournaments and the way they've gone. But when we look at individually, you'd said before we started talking that Hokies had earned 8 spots for the conference, And that's a pretty good number when you're earning 80% of your team a conference bid.
Yeah, we had, I think, except for at 74 and 97, we had everybody else earned an automatic qualifier for the conference. That doesn't mean that you're automatically going to the NCAA tournament. All it means is that you've earned a spot for your conference at that weight class. So that's good. I mean, I think 35 was the number that we were taking out in automatic qualifiers, and that's before you get to any of the at-large bids that we may or may not get when it's all said and done. So, the ACC and I think Virginia Tech will have a lot of guys wrestling at the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and it's a situation where if you've earned the allocation, there is a very, very good chance you're going to go to the show, even if you have a bad day, which is something that, before this system, the ACC, the number of bids was really low. It was in the teens and the low 20s. So the opportunity for the margin for error, as you were saying about the dual meet outcomes, that was pretty much the same with the conference tournament in the old system.
Yeah, I think it was 14 qualifiers is what we had before it changed. And it really was probably the biggest turning point for our conference to get to where we're at right now is the change in the system and the way they did it previously, and they used historical data. It made it very difficult to improve where you were at based on was the formula that they had in place and how your guys performed at the NCAA tournament the year prior to that. When you're starting at a really low number, it's hard to dig yourself out of that hole. Recruiting was very, very difficult at that particular time, for obvious reasons. We took the champ at each weight class, and then there was 4 wild cards or whatever it was that particular year that would go to the NCAA tournament. So it's been a game changer for the ACC in wrestling, and I think it's been a real positive change across the board for our sport.
It's also taking the politics out of those post-tournament wild card meetings. How about the hell that those things were? Yeah. There was a lot of cronyism going on in those things. They were a lot of deals being made beforehand, and I was never directly involved, but it wasn't good. Let's just put it that way. It was there was a lot of politics. For Hokie Nation, to give you some backstory, at one point it wasn't in the ACC, but it was in the old Western region. At one point, they sent a wrestler to the tournament with a wild card who had a 9-21 record. Was what was wrong. That was one of the things that was wrong with the system in that era. Is that actually happened? Yeah, no, it was. I don't have a hard time believing that. It was, it definitely was not good, and it was. It really wasn't fair for the athletes, to be quite honest with you. And like I said earlier, this is the way it's structured now is. It's really, I think it's hard to beat. I'm sure there's probably some people that have great ideas out there, but just using the current year's data, and I think we're getting the right guys to the NCAA tournament at this particular point. At the end of the day, that's what we're trying to accomplish and make it a lot more competitive. Now, as we move towards the tournament here on Sunday, with team scoring the way it is, it's a small field. Of course, there's just the 6 teams in the ACC, so the tournament scoring is not the exact same as you see with a larger bracketed tournament. And, each match is important. Each placement point is important, although the gap isn't as significant. So from a team perspective, what's it take to win a tournament of this size? You got to have all 10 guys perform well. And you got to get guys, in the finals and champs, and you got to take advantage of bonus points. And I think this year, I think it's, in the past, maybe it's been a 2-team race the last few years. I think it's bigger than that this year. I think there's more teams than that have a chance to win. But yeah, I think if you can get all 10 guys scoring points for you, and obviously getting as many guys in the finals and as many champs as possible is huge, just because of the discrepancy between first, second, and third and fourth points. So it's just like any other tournament. You got to take advantage of every single opportunity, and really every match is huge. We saw that last year when we lost a real tight match at 197 in the semifinals to NC State. Really more or less determines the outcome of the team championship. So every guy's got to be on their game every time they step on the mat. You're not going to do a ton of wrestling. So 2 matches to 4 matches at the very most. So, our guys got to be
focused. Their intensity's got to be at a very high level when they step on the mat, and they've got to be ready to compete each and every time they step out there.
And also, those who are aware of how the systems work, they vary by conference, and the ACC does not do true placement. And what I mean by that is if there's an even number and wrestlers haven't met, like at 149, there's 2 entries. If somebody's, that's that potential semi, for example, with AJ Lighton of NC State and Bryce Andonian, as the way the seeds are 2 and 3, winner of that match is going to the finals, and that's a berth to the nationals. Whereas, some conferences look at it, well, you haven't met, we've got that bid on the line, they'll do this. And the ACC doesn't do that, so that's something to keep in mind as we go through the weight classes. We'll start at 125. 3 bids here. Jack Mueller, the top seed. Jacob Camacho of NC State, the second seed. Joey Melendez of North Carolina, the 3. Joey Prada, the 4. And a semi potentially here with Lewis Newell opening up in the 4-5 from Pitt. Semi with Jack Mueller returning NCAA runner-up. And it looks like, on paper, you're okay. There's the match he's got to win. It's going to be either Camacho or Melendez that Prada's got to beat, hypothetically in that third-place match to get to the show. Granted, again, you want to go in thinking you can win every match against a guy like Jack Mueller. But again, realistically, I'm not the coach, I can say this, so blame me, Joey. So say that third-place match, that's the one that punches the ticket.
Yeah, well, I mean, we got to get past Lewis Newell first,
right?
And that's what Joey needs to be focused on. But yeah, I mean, the loss to Melendez in the dual meet, and this is going to be the theme at several weight classes for us. Some close losses in dual meets has really hurt some of the guys in terms of where they are, their placement is in the bracket. So the loss to Melendez put Joey on the other side, where he could potentially see Mueller in the semifinals. And on paper, obviously Mueller's pretty good. He's ranked in the NCAA finals last year and is ranked second in the country, I believe. So yeah, I mean, it's that's going to be he's going to have a challenge there in the semifinals for sure.
And I'll say again, I think from his body of work this year that if things, I think a complete disaster would be the only thing that would probably keep Joey from going. I think he's got a strong case for an at-large, even if things don't go his way. But, definitely a qualifiable weight class there. 133 pounds, 5 of the 6 qualify. So even though Colin Girardi is the 5 seed, this is a good weight class. He's going to open up with Harrison Campbell he's the 4-5. So Harrison Campbell's the 6, going to wrestle Trombley. Down there, 4-5 winner gets Mickey Philippi of Pittsburgh. So just, again, the depth of the ACC, we talked about how much better it is. 5 of the 6 are going to go. I mean, you've got a little bit of room for error here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's, hopefully it's not a matter of him going, it's a matter of him placing as high as he possibly can. And I think there's at this particular weight class, on paper, maybe Filippi's a little bit ahead of the pack, but I still think Colin can beat, if he wrestles his best and he'll have to wrestle a near perfect match against Filippi, I think he's capable of beating any of these guys. I mean, he beat Hernandez. Trombley is, was a tough match to evaluate. He got caught and pinned in the first 30 seconds of the match. So I'd like to see that go the distance and see what happened. I know Colin had beaten him twice last year, and we dropped a really tight match to Louis Hayes that absolutely could have went the other way. So, it's going to be really interesting to see how this weight class plays out. I think there's going to be some results that probably flip from what we saw earlier in the season, and it may be that way at a lot of weight classes. That's just how close things are in our conference, with a lot of these individuals.
141, 3 have been allocated with Tariq Wilson, Zach Sherman, Mitch Moore, the top 3 seeds. Cole Matthews right there on the fringe, but regardless of performance, this is one where you're pretty confident that Mitch is going to get through.
Yeah, and I think Mitch has been wrestling really well, I think, since UNC, and nobody was happy with how he performed in that match, and he made some, I think he did a lot of soul searching after that match, and he made some changes in his approach to how he was doing things and how he was competing, and he's rattled off I think 3 or 4 really good wins since then. He beat Brian Courtney, I think he beat him 10-6 in the dual meet, who's Courtney's solid guy from UVA. Then he turned around and he beat Cedarian Perry, who's a former All-American at Old Dominion. Got the win over Tyreek Wilson, who was, at the time, I think ranked 10th in the country and is a former All-American. And then closed out his schedule with a win over Cole Matthews, who's another really solid guy. So like where Mitch is at and how he's been performing lately, and feel good about him going into the postseason.
And that's also an interesting weight class, too, because Duke doesn't have an entry there. So, Mitch right into the semifinals.
Yeah. And we something that, fans should be aware of, too, if they're kind of keeping score from home is we put a rule in place as coaches last year that if there's no entry, that bye, you'll get the two bonus points in those situations. So, creating incentive for coaches to enter somebody at every single weight class. So Mitchell receive a bye in the quarterfinal round. He'll also get 2 bonus points for that win. So 3 points total with his advancement and his bonus points there.
Interesting scenario there. Moving 149 pounds. Just 2 qualify here. Austin O'Connor is the 1 seed from North Carolina, returning All-American. Bryce Andonian draws the number 2. A.J. Lighton of NC State's the 3. So that's where we sit. And again, I kind of touched on that with just 2 qualifying here, Bryce does not have an opening round match, but we've got the 3-6 with Lighton and Unger with the winner wrestling Bryce here. So 1, how's Bryce been wrestling? And 2, when you got to look ahead to a match, well, this will be his first one, is the one that's going to possibly get him to the show. So what's the mindset there with an athlete like that versus an athlete, say, like Joey Prada, who's got a warm-up match and then got to go through the buzzsaw?
Yeah, he just needs to be ready to wrestle. His routine will be a little bit different. He's not going to wrestle till 1 o'clock, whereas, Joey and Colin will wrestle in that 11 o'clock round. So after Wayne's, Bryce will probably go back to the hotel and relax a little bit, and then he'll get his warm-up in a little bit later and kind of just push that part of his routine back a little bit. So it'll allow him a little bit more rest going into that semifinals match. But as far as Bryce is concerned, Bryce just needs to go out and worry about scoring points. And when he's in that mode and that mindset where he's looking to, create a lot of wrestling, create a lot of scrambles, and then that's where he's really, really good and really dangerous. So, I think that's his mindset and his approach. And I think he's been doing a really good job with that here recently. He's getting bonus points in a lot of matches, and as a true freshman, that's not necessarily an easy thing to do.
Yeah, even as a true freshman, and the qualifying weight class does get 2. All things considered, probably a pretty good position to go. 157, one of the deeper weights in the conference. 5 of the 6 will qualify. Hayden Hidley, AC Headley, Taleb Rahmani, BC LaPrade, and Justin McCoy are the top 5. BC's going to open up with McCoy of UVA, a 4-5 matchup with the winner facing Hidley in the semifinals. And again, this is a situation where a close dual loss kind of shifted things around, and BC finds himself on the top side with Hayden Hidley.
Yeah, definitely. The loss at Pittsburgh for BC in a match where I felt like he wrestled pretty well for the most part. Hurts him from a seeding standpoint. So he's got to be ready to go right out of the gate. McCoy's tough. McCoy just recently had a win over AC Headley. He's a freshman. He's gotten better as the year went along. They had a good scrap up there in Charlottesville about a month ago. There's going to be some exciting wrestling going on at 157 pounds and some tight matches. And we just got to worry about that first one right now and get past that one. And then obviously Hidley's, presents some challenges as well. But if BC just worries about himself, stays on the attack, wrestles smart, I think he's going to, he'll be fine at this tournament.
Is there a difference with how obviously there's a difference with how each athlete does prepare and how the staff goes to prepare them, but compare a situation where you've got like an Andonian who's already who's going to be in the semis and wrestling for a shot to place versus BC, whose first match is against a scrappy kid, and then again he's got that hammer. So with those two being at similar weight classes but with different situational positioning in the bracket, how do you as a staff really dictate how one athlete prepares for that first match compared to another?
I think just your routine is a little bit different. As far as your mindset is concerned, to me, it's the same every time you step on the mat, or at least it should be the same every time you step on the mat, regardless who your opponent is or what the venue is or, where you're wrestling at. So, he'll just BC will weigh in at 11 o'clock. Our guys will we'll weigh in at 9 o'clock. Our guys will start warming up that have those quarterfinal matches around, 10 after 10, something like that. Get a good hard warm-up in for about 25 to 30 minutes, and then rest, recover, get a little bit more fuel in them before they step out on the match, as opposed to where, like I mentioned with Bryce, where he'll go back to the hotel likely and try to relax and get out of there and get out of the arena for a couple of hours.
What about the differences between a guy like BC who's been to the show and a guy like Bryce who's a true freshman? There's obviously different wavelengths going through there because one's got the experience of going through this process, the other doesn't. Yeah,
unfortunately for us, Bryce has wrestled in a lot of big-time events. He won the Ohio State Championships as a freshman. And, he's won Fargo. He's won a lot of big tournaments. So he's used to being in these situations. He knows how to approach things. For Bryce, for us, it's just a matter of trying to, he's got a lot of energy, and, we got to try to make sure that he relaxes as much as possible. He tries to get up and warm up, 2 hours before he wrestles sometime, and he's pacing around. So for us as a staff, we really try to make sure that he doesn't, burn or waste too much energy in things that aren't going to help him prepare for his match. So, that's the biggest challenge with Bryce.
Moving 165 pounds, David McFadden, three-time All-American, goes into his final postseason. 4 will qualify here. Kennedy Monday's the top seed, Thomas Bullard the 2, McFadden the 3, Jake Wenzel the 4, followed by Ben Anderson and Cam Coy. And even though Cam Coy's had a bit of an injury-riddled season, as a dangerous number 6 for David.
Yeah, Coy's had a great high school career out of Pennsylvania. Is a talented guy. Certainly, nothing that you can overlook there in the first round. But for Dave, to me, I'm excited, to see him compete, and wrestle with a chip on his shoulder and get some redemption. Obviously, he didn't wrestle well against NC State, and we all saw against UNC. That goes without saying, but I think it's a chance for Dave to redeem himself, avenge 2 losses. Obviously, we have to get past Coy first, but avenge 2 losses for himself, and go into the NCAA tournament with some momentum. And this is always when Dave has done his best wrestling. So that's what we anticipate seeing this weekend, and then in a couple weeks in Minneapolis.
I guess, how many questions have you fielded about Dave's performance and his headspace, I guess, in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, we talked about it a lot. I think more after UNC. NC State was a little disappointing too. I felt like he's got to attack more, and he's got to put himself in more situations where he can score points. And I think that's part of the issue with some of his results, are just not going out and not getting after guys early enough. And I think if we do that, we'll be in good shape. And I know Dave is excited to end his career on a high note.
Going 174 pounds, this is one weight where we talked about in the opener that didn't qualify a weight, at least Virginia Tech didn't qualify an AQ here. Greg Harvey, the top seed, Daniel Bullard, the 2. But then we get into some basic overall shenanigans. Mason Eaglin of Duke is the 3, Clay Lout the 4, Cody Hughes the 5, Vic Marcelli of Virginia the 6. And this is one that, if I were to look at it on paper, I don't think these things are going to shake out 1 through 6 the way they're seated.
Yeah, and the good thing here for Cody is there's 4 AQs at this weight class. He has wins over Duke and UVA, close losses to Lott, and I think that this weight class is, similar to a couple other ones where there's not a huge discrepancy in terms of, the difference between the number 1 guy and the number 6 guy, to be quite honest with you. There's a lot of parity at this weight class. So I think, this is a way where you could just see some interesting results and things not playing out as people maybe anticipate.
What would it mean for you to see Cody Hughes punch his ticket and go to the show?
I expect him to go. So I would be obviously happy and excited for him and the journey that he's had. But, I think that Cody's capable of doing very, very well at this tournament. I think he can compete with everybody in the bracket. And, if he wrestles really well, I think he can beat anybody in the bracket. That being said, if he doesn't wrestle well, there's a lot of guys that could beat him as well. So he needs to just make sure he's on his game. But I'm excited, for Cody to finish his career. I know when you only get one chance at it through your 5-year career, you really want to make the most of that opportunity and get an opportunity to wrestle at the NCAA tournament. So, it's a pretty cool thing for Cody to have this opportunity.
Is there a deeper message a guy like that brings to the wrestling room with his perseverance to sit there? A lot of people, they're not the start of the first 2 years. They peace out. They either quit wrestling or they transfer somewhere else. And Cody's the guy that's been right there with the program the whole time.
Yeah, I just think it says a lot about his character and his work ethic and sticking to things. I think it's, hopefully it's a precursor for the success that he's going to have outside of wrestling once he's done here at Virginia Tech.
184 pounds. Top half of this bracket is, the seeds are nails. Of course, Hunter Bolen, the 1 seed, Trent Hidley, the 2, Nino Bonacorsi, the 3, and Bolen off the loss to Bonacorsi, and still draws the number 1 seed. And, we with what's going on at the weight class, because there's still a lot of unanswered questions about what's happening in the Pacific time zone at a particular school that's also got some maroon or burgundy, whichever you prefer. Hunter Bolen could potentially be in that situation where that session 6 is on the horizon. But right now, we've seen him take a loss to Bonacorsi. Now, is that a good thing? I mean, I know, of course, depending on how you use the loss. But again, some people say that, oh, well, you want a loss going to nationals, so you're not, overconfident or you haven't been pushed. And what did Hunter Bolen learn from that match against Nino Bonacorsi last time out?
I just think that you always have to be ready. And I think that, when you're the guy or the perceived guy and you're on a hot streak, you're going to get everybody's best effort, and you got to be ready for everybody's best effort. And Bonacorsi he's a tough guy. I watched him wrestle in high school. He's by no means somebody that you should underestimate. And I'm not saying Hunter underestimated him, but I don't know that he was really necessarily ready for what he got into there, and I think it contributed to the loss. I think he, like I said, it could be a blessing in disguise, and we'll see how things play out. But it's a better lesson to learn in a dual meet than it is in the quarterfinals or the semifinals or at any point at the NCAA tournament. So I think hopefully more than anything, it just gave Hunter some focus. And, if you look at what Hunter's done this year and the wins that he has against top 10 and top 20 guys, it's pretty darn impressive. And, when you put yourself out there as much as he has and wrestle as many highly ranked guys as he has, and he's come out on top the majority of the time, it's everybody stumbles once in a while. And to me, that's how we have to look at this thing. I mean, it's something we need to learn from, and we need to make sure it doesn't happen again.
How do you keep an athlete focused knowing that it looks like, as of right now, as we record this on Wednesday, March 4th, that we may not see the number 1 gun in the country in the postseason in Zahid Valencia? So how do you keep Bolen focused with knowing that the potential roadblock for a national title may not be in there?
I think that the loss to Bonacorsi probably did a lot of that already. And there's a lot of capable guys at that weight class, whether Valencia is in there or not. Hunter Bolen's got to worry about Hunter Bolen and his preparation and his how he performs and how he competes. And if he does that, Hunter's going to do really well at the national tournament. I just know what he's about, and I know how good of a wrestler he is. So, we can't worry about who's in there. We can't worry about other guys. We can't worry about what's going on out there. It's something that we really haven't made a big deal about. It is what it is. And whether he's in there or not, we're going to show up and compete to the best of our ability in Minneapolis.
197 pounds, just one bid here. JILO, the top seed from Virginia. Stan Smeltzer sits at the number 4, and a little bit of an up and down season, up and down ride for Stan. And to get there, he's a Virginia guy. He's going to have to go through a Virginia guy at UVA, and hopefully he can get to that position where, even if things don't go well, and he doesn't win that AQ spot and win the conference, puts himself in position to try to at least be on the board for an at-large bid, which you need to be at least one placement below. So, but coming through that top side of the bracket, it's going to be a tall order. JIL is pretty good. Had some good wins this year, but, Stan's development and what makes him dangerous here at the weight class?
I just, I know Stan struggled a little bit at times, but I feel like that he's given really good effort, and he's an undersized 197 pounder for sure, and he's never going out there, and I don't feel like any of his losses are because he's not competing hard or he's not giving great effort, and in a lot of cases, he's kept himself in some matches just by wrestling really hard. So, he needs to continue to do that. And we need to just continue for Stan. He needs to continue to get better at wrestling. And I think if he can do that, he's got the toughness and the work ethic to continue to improve, and who knows where he can be in a couple of years. But I'm proud of the way Stan's competed this year, to be quite honest with you.
5 heavyweights qualified: Demetrius Thomas of Pitt, Deontay Wilson, NC State, Quinn Miller, Virginia. John Borst is the number 4 seed for the Hokies. Andrew Gunning of North Carolina, number 5. And Duke, really, again, with a really, really, really rough season, sitting with most of their guys as the number 6 seeds. But again, little room for, you get some room for error here, even as the top 5 go. But what's the goal for John Borst here going into this tournament? Obviously, win the tournament is the goal for everybody coming in, but from a tactical standpoint, from a technical standpoint, from a mental standpoint, what are some things John Borst needs to accomplish here this weekend?
I don't think, I'm not worried about John from a technical or a tactical standpoint. John needs to go out and he needs to wrestle hard for 7 minutes. And, we didn't see that at Pittsburgh, and he knows that, that his performance wasn't acceptable. And, he's capable. He needs to get back to the guy that he was in December in Las Vegas and how he was competing there. And, if he does that, he'll do fine in this postseason. But, there's some things that he needs to do differently and that we haven't seen in the last few times that he's had opportunities to represent Virginia Tech. So, John understands what the expectation is for him. It's been communicated to him pretty clearly. And, he's got an opportunity to turn things around in terms of his just the way he's representing himself and representing our program when he steps on the mat. So that's what I'm looking for more than anything from John Borst, is to go out there and fight for 7 minutes, and not for 6 minutes and 45 seconds. He needs to fight for 7 minutes or 9 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever it takes for until the match is over. And that's really what I'm looking for John moving forward.
Yeah, that's the rundown. Weight by weight, we go Sunday, March the 8th at Peterson Event Center. The doors will open at 10 a.m. on Sunday. First round action at 11 a.m. Semifinals at 1, followed by Conti semis at 3:30. Consolation finals at 5. Championship matches begin at 7. Of course, this one being streamed at the ACC Network, ACC Network Extra. Hey, the finals on TV, Tony. ACC Network on the live linear broadcast network, 7 p.m. on Sunday night. TV and the ACC Network.
Yeah, no question. It's great. The ACC Network, I think, has been awesome for wrestling in our conference. I think it's just going to continue to get better and better every single year. And I know they're probably still figuring some things out with the sport of wrestling. But yeah, it's exciting times for our conference and with what the ACC Network has brought to the table for us and allowed us to, expand our audience and, really given us a big platform to show what wrestling's all about in our conference. So it's exciting times.
All right, Coach Robie, good luck on Sunday up in Pittsburgh, seeing if you can wrestle that ACC Championship trophy back to Blacksburg. It's a pretty tough field. Concentrated excellence is what I like to call it. So, Coach Robie, good luck and safe travels.
Thanks, buddy.
Hokie fans, listen to Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling anywhere you go by subscribing on Apple Podcasts. Go to InsideVirginiaTechWrestling.com/iTunes, or you can get the exclusive Android or iOS apps by going to InsideVirginiaTechWrestling.com.
show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.